When an AR goes off, a lot of things happen all in a split second. We have a contained explosion with 60,000 PSI just inches from our face. Burning gases and powder looking for a place to escape, metal launching out of the muzzle, a bolt rotating, recoiling, and loading another round ready to shoot, all accompanied with 175 decibels of sound. Now, all of this can be very impressive, but also quite disorienting to even a well-trained individual. But one small accessory can save us hearing loss. It can reduce muzzle flash, give us better recoil control, and even increase muzzle velocity. That would be a suppressor. Guys, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for being here. We have to give a huge shout out to Royal Range for giving us a place to shoot for this video. It's like 100 degrees outside here in Middle Tennessee, plus the humidity. We just had to have a place to film a video like this because suppressors do get really hot. So a big thank you to them. They're just southwest of Nashville, and it's an awesome spot to get some training, come out and pick up some cool accessories. Now, if you want to support us, Patreon is $5 a month and the sub button is free. But back to suppressors, cans, hush puppies, shush tubes, whisper pickles, the forbidden popsicle. I'm sure that there's plenty more names that some of you guys can think of, so throw those in the comments section. But suppressors have a very special place in my heart. But there can be a serious concern with spending a fair amount of money on an accessory that goes on the end of your gun, just because if you pick the wrong one for your wrong rifle, you could have some of those benefits go backwards on you, and you could have a massive decrease in the lifespan of your firearm. You could get a lot of hot burning gas back into your face. It can even increase muzzle flash, decrease accuracy, and all in all be a poor shooting experience. So if it is so expensive, and they can be beneficial, but they can also in some ways be a downgrade if you pick the wrong one, the question is, what makes a good suppressor for my rifle, for my use case? Well, the short answer is it depends on what it is you're trying to do with the gun. So you really need to understand what your use case is for a tool like this before you go out and try to buy $1,000 or $500 or $1,500 suppressor. So let's dive into a little bit of the nuance and try and help you guys figure out how to pick the correct suppressor for you and your use case. And this doesn't just apply to suppressors. When we're talking about really any accessory that's going onto our firearms, we need to ask ourselves, what is the use case for this gun? And there's really no wrong answer here. Your platform could be built for the purpose of a fighting rifle, as in the original intent for the Second Amendment. It could be a good home defense setup, or it may even just be a decent coyote gun, a hunting rifle, or maybe it's just a gun that you're trying to get your kids to be able to shoot so that they're not flinching every time they pull the trigger. So with that context, we have broken down two separate categories, especially for suppressors that are going onto our AR-15s. And those two categories, for the purpose of this video, are going to be hard use and soft use. Now, hard use firearms are meant for the purpose of being rode hard, put away wet, and to keep going no matter what. But that doesn't mean that they can't also be used for fun plinking and getting your kids into shooting. Soft use firearms and suppressors, it's not to say that they can't be combat or shooting firearms and suppressors. The difference here, though, is we are less concerned about a theoretical two-way range. Now, I have never been on, hope to never be on a two-way range, and the odds of me ever being in a gunfight are very, very, very low. But I do not want to build out firearms thinking that I have a Second Amendment style gun and then find myself in a really bad situation with a firearm that is almost good enough for that scenario. So again, we're talking about hard use firearms and soft use firearms. Guys, before we move on, we have to thank some of the sponsors that make this content possible for you for free every single week. First and foremost, we have Steel Industries. For all of your night vision needs, whether you're shooting suppressed with lasers, or you actually need a 14 or dual tubes, or you just have questions about how to get the appropriate night vision, go check out Steel Industries. They have an amazing customer service team. Next, guys, we have Wetworks for all of your nylon needs, whether it's slick plate carriers or a Wraith hood. If you are trying to reduce your signature, as in your human silhouette, these Wraith hoods are amazing. We just did a thermal mitigation video, and with a little bit of foliage, those Wraith hoods work phenomenally. So go check that out. And lastly, guys, Silencer Shop. We wouldn't have been able to make this kind of video possible without their assistance and support. Also, thank you very much for sending us over this PTR Spiritus can. Really excited to shoot a couple thousand rounds through it and see what I actually think. So with that, guys, go ahead and hit the links in the description for all these brands. We have some discounts, and for others, I guess you're just gonna have to spend all your monies. But before we start talking about hard use firearms, I need to paint a little bit of a picture for you guys, just so that we have some context as to what it is that we're gonna be talking about and find some of the potential errors or pitfalls with suppressors. So let's say that you have your favorite rifle, you've been shooting it for years, you got a lot of rounds through it, and you know this gun intimately. Then you decide, hey, I'm gonna go pick up a suppressor. You do the silencer shop Form 4 kiosk, and it comes back in just a few days because it actually is starting to be that fast. And you get your suppressor, you're super excited, you go to throw it on your rifle, you pull the trigger, and it doesn't fire consistently. Maybe you're getting malfunctions. Maybe you're getting a whole ton of gas in the face, or maybe it does cycle, but it is just simply not pleasant to shoot because it is so much more violent and you have more recoil. What is going on here? Well, the short answer to the question is back pressure. So what is back pressure? Well, back pressure already exists in your AR. The way that the gassing system works is you need to have pressure inside of the firearm to get that bolt to cycle. But when we add a can onto the end of the gun, it adds more back pressure. Because it is simply trapping the gases and keeping those gases from escaping out of the muzzle, the gases that, again, are designed to make your gun cycle are adding more pressure because of the can. And that's why you're getting a less desirable outcome when you put that can onto your rifle. You're finding that you have a fail to feed, you're getting more gas in the face, blown gas rings, fail to eject, failure to extract, a whole list of problems as soon as you put your suppressor on. Additionally, you're also probably gonna notice that you're getting an excessive amount of gas back in your face if you have the wrong suppressor on your firearm. But extra gas back in your face is more than just, oh, haha, my buddy is crying while he's shooting. It can start to cause some very serious health concerns over a period of time. When you pull the trigger, that is expelling a whole ton of chemicals because our firearm is not airtight, and we are now breathing in and getting a smattering of bad toxic fumes all over our face. So those chemicals include, I can't remember, hit them, Jonathan.
Heavy metals, toxic fumes, lead, ammonium, carbon monoxide, hydrogen cyanide, all great things.
Do you know what it does to you? Hydrogen cyanide?
Thank you. I can't remember all those. But the point is that stuff is really bad for you, especially over prolonged periods of time. And that's why a lot of companies like Avon are starting to tackle this problem with a respirator mask. You don't have to always wear a big full face gas mask, but simply wearing a mask like a miter when you're shooting suppressed for high rates of fire, or especially in confined spaces like a shoot house or if you're indoors, is starting to become viewed just like wearing eye and ear protection, because over a long period of time, those health concerns can be very seriously detrimental to your memory, to your lifespan, to your general health. There's another thing that people are doing to decrease back pressure and decrease the amount of gas that you're getting back into your face, which is a flow through or low back pressure design on a suppressor. But that can come with other downsides as well. So we'll talk about that here in a minute. So clearly there's a long list of concerns when it comes to the use case for your suppressor rifle combination. So let's dive into hard use firearms and start applying some of our biggest concerns and categories when it comes to selecting a suppressor for that hard use style rifle. So these categories are going to include durability, signature reduction, which is going to encompass both sound and flash, the concern for back pressure, and finally cost. Let's kick it off with durability. So when we're talking about durability, I'm not necessarily talking about throwing your rifle in the back of your truck and having your suppressor hit the side of the seat. No, the most use and the most abuse that your suppressor is going to see is every time you pull the trigger. There is so much pressure and essentially sandblasting going on inside of your can, not to mention there's a ton of heat. These suppressors can get up to 1,000 degrees plus when you're shooting rapidly. So when it comes to durability, we need to be concerned about the high rapid rates of fire and still allow your suppressor and gun to shoot well. Not to mention, when you heat and cool metal and materials, if you select the wrong material, you can get really strange warping or cracking. So the material that goes into your can for durability is gonna play a huge role. Now for the category of hard use firearms, Inconel and stainless are really gonna be the play here, and that's because they have such an amazing durability when it comes to rapid heating and cooling, especially over long periods of time with rapid fire. Titanium is very durable and it's a very hard metal, but it flakes and sparks because it's reactive to the oxygen when there's those burning gases coming out of the can. Additionally, if it gets too hot, you can start to see some cracking, some warping, and the suppressor even blowing up just because of those rapid strings of fire. So if you are buying a titanium can, you may even be seeing warning not meant for rapid fire or only meant for X pressure in whatever caliber firearm it is that you're shooting. So for the hard use firearms, Inconel and stainless, those are definitely the play here. But even still, there's a lot of context when it comes to something like a titanium can. For example, if you have an AR platform in 300 blackout, because that round, when subsonic, is such a lower pressure, you're not gonna see that same level of sparking coming out of a titanium can. The can is not gonna get nearly as hot because again, those subsonic rounds are just not generating the heat the same way as a 5.56. Now, reducing the sound on a supersonic projectile, so that's gonna be your 6.5s, your 5.56, your 308s, typically your hunting and your fighting firearms. Those rounds are gonna be going at a supersonic speed, as in they are breaking the sound barrier. And as soon as that projectile reaches open air outside of your firearm, it will be making a supersonic crack. So even with a suppressor, you're still going to have decibel ratings that are above hearing safe levels. But if we can reduce some of that concussion of the expanding gas just outside of the muzzle of the gun inside of the can, and we can reduce the flash through the suppressor, man, we are well on our way doing what we can to get as much of the benefits as we can for a fighting rifle out of a suppressor. Now, let's talk about flash suppression and how we can actually achieve that. So when done properly, a suppressor is really just a glorified flash hider at the end of our gun. And a lot of this has to do with the baffle design and the material that we're looking at. So if you're looking at buying a suppressor, like I mentioned before, Inconel and stainless are some of the more preferred materials that are going into cans for hard use rifles. Now, Inconel is primarily used for aircraft exhaust parts, so it is incredibly durable even when it is heated up and cooled down rapidly and consistently. Additionally, it can be used in 3D printing as can stainless, and so it's fairly easy for engineers to design a quality baffle stack out of a very durable material. Not to mention, in regards to a flash suppression, titanium is very reactive to oxygen. And so when you have burning gases exploding and expanding inside of your titanium suppressor, you may even start to see sparking that you just can't get rid of out the end of your can. So they may sound really, really nice. They may be ultra lightweight because it is titanium, but you're really never gonna get away from having some sparking and some flashing coming out of your titanium can just because of the material that it's made out of. But even still, there's more context that needs to be added when we're concerned about both sound and flash reduction, and that's gonna be your barrel length. So if I have an 18-inch with a specific suppressor and an 11.5, both are shooting 5.56, if I have the same can, I'm still probably gonna see some different results in regards to a flash and sound suppression. Now, why is that? Well, when I have a longer barrel, I have more time and more space for that burning powder and gas to burn up completely before it exits the barrel. So that's why different suppressors are going to perform differently on different barrel lengths. There's a lot of context here. So if you're looking for a longer barrel suppressor, you can probably get away with a smaller, lighter, flow through, less back pressure can and still get those awesome benefits. But if you're working with a shorter barrel, you may be confined to a suppressor that is a little bit heavier or a little bit more expensive just to get those exact same results of signature reduction. All right, so we talked about durability and signature suppression. Let's talk about back pressure and the concern there. So on fighting rifles and hard use guns, typically they are overgassed to a degree. And we've talked about how that gassing system works and can affect how the gun functions. But when we put a suppressor that has higher back pressure for the sake of lower flash and decent sound suppression, we often get a firearm that is darn near insufferable to shoot. Now, as an example, this 11.5 BCM is gassed to just keep trucking no matter what. That extra pressure without the can is going to run even if it's dirty or dusty, it hasn't been lubed, and that's what I want for a fighting hard use rifle. But when I throw that can on, it starts to feel like, man, it's just beating me up, it's beating the gun up, I'm blowing gas rings, and I start to have a lot of problems. There's a lot of nuance on how to fix this, but typically I tend to go towards the cheapest solution to solve the problem. You could swap your barrel, but that's often a $300 solution. You could get an adjustable gas block, but that does start to introduce some other concerns as well. That's why I always start with the action spring, the buffer spring down in your lower. So upgrading from a standard carbine spring to something like a Springco Red or Red Hot, which is just red and white, often starts to add some extra cushion for the pressure that bolt is receiving when it is starting to come back. If you need to increase your buffer weight from a carbine to an H2 or an H3, you can do that as well. But something else to keep in mind is when you are shooting a fighting rifle suppressed, you're probably going to see the gas rings on your bolt wearing out faster simply because you just have more pressure. The way you test that is by turning your bolt upside down with the bolt extended inside of the carrier, and if it collapses under its own weight, man, it's probably about time you start replacing those. Typically, we see replaces on gas rings happen around 5,000 rounds when you are shooting these guns hard and fast with a suppressor. All right, so what should you be looking at when you're concerned about back pressure? Because let's say that you have a fighting carbine that's gassed for adverse conditions. If you are looking for a can that is not going to introduce excessive amounts of back pressure, you're probably going to be looking for a low back pressure design. So that may be something like a Flow 556K from Huxworks. This can actually has holes on the front of it that allow the gas to bleed off towards the front away from you. Think a sprinkler system on the end of a hose. There's actually a route for that pressure to go. Now, you could also go with something that doesn't have holes, but is still a low back pressure design. This PTR Spiritus we just got from Silencer Shop. I haven't even shot it yet, but I hear really good things about it. As opposed to something like a Surefire RC2 or RC2 Mini that has a ton of back pressure. I still love these cans, but this does absolutely change how much pressure is coming back into the gun. And here's the concern for that. Not only am I getting more pressure into the gun and I may need to change my gas settings or my buffer system, it's also gonna be holding all that hot gas on the can, back on the barrel, and adding more pressure onto my gas rings. So I may start to see a decrease in lifespan on my firearm and my firearm parts simply because this is a higher back pressure design as opposed to a flow-through or low back pressure can. Now, unfortunately, when it comes to back pressure, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You're probably gonna have to select whether you want a really good signature reduction or you want a really good flow-through low back pressure design. As an example, the Surefire RC2s are incredible when it comes to both sound and flash reduction, even on really short barrels, but they are going to be a higher back pressure design meant for combat. Then on the inverse, you could have a really nice flow-through design, kind of like that Flow 556K, but it may not be as beneficial when it comes to signature or sound reduction. So you're gonna have to pick and choose what it is that you want. You just also have to keep in mind that you can spend significantly more money and start to get some of these all-encompassing benefits. So as an example, the Cat White Bread on a 556 does an amazing job of all three of these categories, but it is more expensive. Again, I keep hearing amazing things about this PTR Spiritus, but I haven't even shot it, so I'll find out in a couple of years what I actually think about it. So you're gonna have to pick and choose what you want, but you still have to consider cost. So let's get into that. So when it comes to cost, you can buy a suppressor for sub $500 and it's probably gonna do something very well. The downside is it's not gonna do everything well. So you're gonna have to pick and choose, what are my priorities here? Do I want something ultra lightweight for my 300 Blackout that I'm only gonna shoot to get it zeroed and it's gonna sit in my closet for home defense? Or do I want something that I can put an FRT trigger on under it and let that can just heat up and still keep trucking? Unfortunately, this is one of those categories where you get what you pay for. So if you're gonna be spending $1,500 on a can that is gonna last many, many years of you shooting, awesome, dude, it's probably gonna give you a good lifespan. If you're gonna want to test out a bunch of different cans and spend just a couple $100, that's a great option too. You just have to keep in mind, you're not gonna get everything that you hope for if you're spending probably sub $800. Again, there's a lot of context to this when it comes into caliber selection and barrel length and use case, but hopefully that helps you guys get a little bit of an idea for hard use rifles. Let's move on to soft use. Soft use rifles. Not every single rifle needs to be a hard use combat style gun. In fact, you should probably have a good variety of some different rifles if you do have multiple ARs. So in this category, as previously mentioned, this is something that I may be using for coyote hunting, backpacking, if I'm going camping and I want to have a carbine with me, or maybe again, I'm just trying to teach my wife or my kiddo how to get into guns and be comfortable with them, and I want something that is lightweight with great sound reduction, but I'm okay with a little bit of flash out on the end. So let's talk about materials in regards to a soft use style gun. I know it may feel like I kind of dogged on titanium as a material. I think it's a phenomenal material for suppressors. It's just not as good for hard use, but when it comes to soft use, man, it absolutely has its place. So if you're handing over a gun to someone and the suppressor is made of Inconel or stainless, while it's gonna have some really good sound and flash reduction, it's gonna be heavy in arguably the worst place to put weight on the firearm, which is way out on the end of it. So you're getting a ton of leverage and starts to act like a fulcrum as it's pulling away from you. Whereas tie, we can have a big suppressor with a lot of volume, great sound reduction, and still be lightweight. I'm probably not ripping off a whole ton of rounds or going through a heavy training session with a titanium can anyway. So we just need to know where some of these materials can go into place. If you're competing or you're hunting, tie is an awesome selection when it comes to suppressors on your soft use firearms. All right, signature suppression for a soft use firearm. This category, we really need good sound suppression, in my opinion. So let's say that it is a home defense setup. Man, I don't really care if it's all that flashy, but I'm probably not gonna have any ears on because I don't even have my socks or underwear on if someone's breaking into my house at 1 a.m. What I do want is an ultra lightweight can that has amazing sound suppression. I want a long, lightweight, quiet suppressor that does an amazing job at reducing the sound. I do not care, again, if it's flashy at all. So in regards to sound suppression or signature suppression in general, we're swapping those roles in regards to soft use. Finally, cost for a softer use gun, because let's say that you're just getting into this and you want to test out a suppressor. They are expensive and you want to get something good quality. You're willing to spend $800 to $1,000 on your can, but you can only get one right now. So should you get a 30 cal can or a multi-caliber can and swap them around on different guns? The short answer is yes, that's a great option to start out with, but you have to take into consideration the fact that if you have a 30 cal suppressor on the end of a 5.56 gun, you're probably not going to get as good as flash or sound mitigation as if you had just gotten a 5.56 can. Now, once again, there's a little bit of nuance here. If I have a massive 30 cal suppressor, there's so much volume in there that it's probably gonna do a decent job at reducing the sound and the flash, as opposed to a super short, super compact 5.56 can on that 5.56 gun. So when it comes to cost on your first suppressor, what should you do? Well, that's up to you, but here's what I did. I could only afford one suppressor at a time, and I opted to go with a Surefire RC2. The reason for that is because I knew it was gonna give me many years of shooting with the primary caliber that I shoot the most with, 5.56, and it was gonna give me good sound and flash reduction, despite the fact that it was a little bit heavy. Additionally, I could get a lot of muzzle devices that could go onto, which made it easier for me to have a good mounting solution on all of my 5.56 guns. And that's a perfect segue into a mounting solution for our suppressor. So the can somehow needs to find itself on your gun and not get launched off every single time you pull the trigger. And there's many, many ways to do that. So one route is a proprietary system. Surefire is a great example. Their flash hiders and their muzzle brakes, even solutions made by other brands like B&T, can still take the proprietary locking system that Surefire uses. There's a lot of great suppressor companies out there that have their own proprietary systems, but it may be advantageous to think ahead to a solution that offers you the ability to mount multiple different suppressors to it. So let me back up real quick. One way that you can get a suppressor onto your gun is direct thread. At the end of your barrel, you're gonna have a thread pitch like 1/2 by 28 or 5/8 by 24, which are some common options for a 5.56 or 308 barrel. And if you need to get your can on there via direct thread, it's gonna be a really lightweight mounting solution where you just spin the suppressor on as if it was a muzzle brake or flash hider. But what happens if you take your suppressor off? Well, now you're gonna be having your threads of the barrel exposed. Those can get carbon on them. they can get bumped against something and now the threads of your barrel are destroyed and you can't get anything else on there. Additionally, you're probably gonna have a whole ton of flash. You're not gonna have good recoil mitigation just because it is an open barrel on the end. So companies started making flash hiders and or muzzle brakes that can double as a suppressor host. Now, what's the difference between a flash hider and a muzzle brake? A flash hider does exactly what it sounds like. The goal is to reduce the flash. A muzzle brake is going to be designed to vent the gas and that explosion in a specific way, as in it is pushing gas in order to control the very end of the muzzle and keep it flat right where it is. Now, there are some downsides here. The downside of a flash hider is that it doesn't give us the best recoil mitigation. You're going to have to do a little bit more work. And a big downside to a muzzle brake is that it is going to be fairly loud, and your buddies around you are even gonna notice, like, dude, that gun is so loud, put a can on it or swap your muzzle device. But if you're competing and you're not worried about that sound, great man, keep your muzzle flat. But when you have a muzzle brake that is designed to vent the gas off to the sides as opposed to straight forward, it's actually going to protect the lifespan of your suppressor. Now, once you put a flash hider or a muzzle brake inside of a can, you're not getting the benefits of the flash hider or the muzzle brake. We just have to note that a flash hider is going to put more wear and tear onto your can as opposed to a muzzle brake inside of your can. So if you're gonna be shooting primarily suppressed 90% of the time, great man, go with a muzzle brake, even if it's on the end of a 300 blackout or a 5.56, whatever that is. If you wanna have the benefits of taking your suppressor off, save some weight, reduce the overall length of your rifle, and you want to have good flash mitigation, a flash hider is probably a really good way to go. So there's just a few trade-offs with what it is that you're looking for. But man, to go back to that problem, what if I have multiple suppressors, multiple firearms, and I want to be able to swap things around? Hub is a solution for that. Some suppressors allow you to be able to unthread the attachment point and customize how you are putting that suppressor onto your rifle. So there's a lot of different solutions here when it comes to mounting your suppressor onto your firearm. I can't give you every single option, but go look around at what flash hiders, what muzzle brakes, or what hub mounting solutions you actually want. All right, guys, to wrap this up, if you're looking for a suppressor, maybe it's your first or your fifth, just keep in mind what it is you're actually trying to do with your rifle. Then hit your cost and prioritize what it is that you want to actually get out of that can, whether it's a lifetime with durability, a sound or flash reduction. Whatever your goal is, you can probably find it because there are so many companies out there making a long list of suppressors. Now, if you're looking for a quality military style suppressor, I would probably just go look at what has already had some contracts in the past, like Surefire, Knights Armament, AAC. It's a long list, but with a quick Google search, you can figure out what some of those solutions are. And there's gonna be a long write-up on what suppressors are gonna be offering you different benefits. Finally, guys, I am not a suppressor expert, but there's an entire team of customer service fellows over at the Silencer Shop website, so go check them out. If you have questions on some of this stuff, like how hub works or what muzzle devices do this or that, or lifespan on a suppressor or barrel, some of that is well beyond me. So go ask Silencer Shop. And again, thank you so much, Royal Range, for letting us come in here. We are so thankful to get out of the sun. With that, guys, final dad advice for you. I don't care how good you are or how long you've been shooting with firearms. No one is above the standard firearm safety rules. That goes for every single person. With that, go hit the range and don't get lead poisoning. I think this will cycle, but we'll find out. All right. Okay. This is not going to go well. Now it's ejected like